Welcome back to the Steel City Sports Podcast. Today we're going to be ranking the top 10 players in the NBA. And it's really hard to make these types of lists because there's so many different factors to really bring in. You have skill, leadership, mentality, all that stuff. And the way that I did it, the way that I really made this list, because it's easy to pick the 10 guys, but to really order them is the tough part. And the way I did it was in my head, just looking for this season, the upcoming 23-24 season. You're picking this one person to just have on your team to win a championship this year. And that's how I decided to do this order. So really, it's going to come down to the value that I think the player provides to a team. And so let's get into it. Before the top 10, I have a couple quick honorable mentions. For our first honorable mention, we have Kawhi Leonard, who, when healthy, I still believe is a top 10 player, but we've just had such a rocky run with Kawhi over the past couple of years now that I don't even know what he is at this point because, when he plays, he's really good, but he doesn't play. So I don't really know how to rank Kawhi, so I just didn't put him in the top 10. The next honorable mention is Anthony Davis, who was relatively healthy last year. I mean, he was a big reason why the Lakers made that run to the Western Conference Finals. He has similar issues to Kawhi where he doesn't play many games. He gets hurt a lot, but he definitely plays a lot more than Kawhi does. And AD was very close, but putting the injuries aside, also, it seems like one out of every 3 games, AD just kind of takes off. And he settles a lot. He'll settle for jumpers instead of, attacking the paint. And I get that. It's easier to do that just from a physicality standpoint. I get it. But whenever Anthony Davis puts his shoulder down and just takes over and out physicals people, he's a top 5 player in the NBA. But like I said, he doesn't do it every game. So he doesn't quite make my top 10. The next honorable mention is Devin Booker, who is widely considered to be the best shooting guard in the NBA, and you're going to get no complaints from me. He's one of the best scorers in the NBA, and there's really no reason he didn't make the top 10 other than I just think the players that have above him are just better. That's all. There's no real critique of him. And then the last honorable mention we have is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who just made first-team All-NBA. For that reason alone, I had to include him as an honorable mention. At number 10, I have Damian Lillard, and doesn't he just look so thrilled to be in Milwaukee in this picture? Just kidding, but when Damian Lillard is healthy and playing, I genuinely believe he is second to Steph Curry, the best shooter in the NBA. I mean, he is incredible. He can take over any game. He dropped 70 in a game last year, which just shows his scoring ability. Not much in the way of defense, but if you listen to me, I don't really knock guards for not playing defense. That's kind of that's just the way of the NBA in today's era. But yeah, I think he's the clutchest player in the NBA. Whenever they introduced that clutch player, the award last year, thought it was kind of a shoo-in that Dame was going to win, and he didn't end up getting it. But you have that, and I think him and Giannis are going to be the best duo in the NBA this upcoming year. Just for their fit is incredible. Yeah, I'm really excited to see Dame now that he's genuinely competing for a championship. And we're going to get to see a new side of Dame because we've seen him make a couple, playoff runs, but that was as a underdog. Now they're the heavy favorite to win the championship this year. So I'm excited to watch Dame in Milwaukee. Feels weird to say this, but at number 9 we have LeBron James. I still have him as a top 10 basketball player in the world. I feel like people are still going to be mad at me for having LeBron at 9, but I think this is just the reality. I mean, it's not a critique of LeBron. I just simply think the people I have above him, I'd rather have this upcoming season. LeBron is still incredible. He's still a phenomenal player, a high-end all-star, all-NBA player. He's just not, the dominant player that he once was, where, he could just take over any given game. You go back to, 2016, 2017, 2018, LeBron in Cleveland, he could just take over any given game. It didn't matter. Just he could out-physical anybody. He was the best pure athlete in the sport. And he's still great today. He's just not quite at the level he was. But again, what do you expect? The guy's 37. And at number 8, we have Jason Tatum. He's one of the most versatile players in the game. Really good defender. And he's a complete engine on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, there's nothing he can't do. He can create, He can shoot. He can drive. He can do it all. My only critique of Tatum, the only reason he's not a little higher, is similar to what I said about AD. I feel like sometimes Tatum settles. He seems to be a player that likes to settle for bad shots, and that kind of makes sense since he idolized Kobe. But he's still phenomenal. And he's the fact that, like, I know it's a meme now to, like, talk about how young he is, but, like, you look at the amount of playoff games he's played at his age. What is he, 24 or 25 years old, and he's already been to, what, like 3 or 4 Eastern Conference Finals? And we still are not even at the peak of Jason Tatum's prime, you know? The peak of your prime is usually 27 to, like, 30 or 31, something like that. Tatum's only, 25 now, so he still has some room to grow. I'd like to see his motor be a little better. It seems like games where he's kind of just standing around, his body language is kind of off, and I think the team can reflect that at times. But when he's on, I mean, he's unguardable. I mean, he broke my heart in that Sixers series. I was rooting for the Sixers, and that, what was that, Game 5 or Game 6, I can't remember, where he just tore it up. He couldn't miss. It didn't matter how many hands you threw in his face. It didn't matter. He was making every shot. When he's on, he is on fire. He's dynamite. Coming in at number 7, we have Jimmy Butler. And from a talent perspective, like, Jason Tatum should be above Jimmy Butler. He should be a better player than Jimmy Butler, but he's not. Jimmy Butler, when it comes to heart, when it comes to mentality, there's no one that plays with more heart and passion than Jimmy Butler. And that's what I love about the guy. I mean, the teams that he's taken to the finals, the 2 Heat teams that he's taken to the finals are crazy. I mean, like, we all know that everyone likes to say that the bubble was a big outlier. Well, what about this past year? He just did it again. That team had no business in the finals. I mean, the talent matchup between the Nuggets and the Heat is the size of the Grand Canyon. And they still were able to get 2 games off that Nuggets team because of Jimmy. And you talk about just versatility and all that. Like, Jimmy can do it all pretty much. I mean, there's no comp for Jimmy in the NBA because he goes from, like, a good all-star level player in the regular season, and then whenever the postseason comes around, he's one of the best players in the history of the game. Coming in at number 6, we have Luka Doncic, the one-man offense, the do-it-all guy. The thing that I found the most interesting about Luka's game is he's not a very athletic guy. I mean, like, he's slow. He doesn't really strike me as an athlete. Like, you look at Luka and you don't think, oh, wow, that guy's a professional athlete. It's his skill. He is one of the most skilled basketball players to ever play the game. From a handle standpoint, from just a shot creation, his creativity, his playmaking is off the charts. And this is a really interesting season because for years now I've been saying about Luka is I think he's one of, like, of course he's incredible, but I think he's one of the more difficult stars to build around just because his play style is so unique. He takes up so much responsibility on the offensive side of the ball. Reminds me of, like, that prime James Harden where he was the team, he was the system. So it's interesting that they bring in Kyrie, another ball-dominant guard. So I'm really interested to see how they perform this upcoming year. And at number 5, we have the reigning MVP, Joel Embiid, and he is the quintessential modern-day big because he does everything. He can shoot, he can post you up, he can fade on you, he can crush you in the paint, and he's an elite defender. I've called him in the past Kobe Bryant in a center's body, and I don't think that that's hyperbolic. I mean, you look at the fadeaways, it looks identical to Kobe. He has the clutch gene like Kobe. And the only reason I didn't put him higher is just I got to see some more playoff success from Joel. Part of it's not his fault. I get it because he's had injuries and he hasn't had the best teammates around him, but he hasn't been to the 3rd round in his career. So that's a big goal. I'd like to see Embiid reach the conference final this year. I don't think it'll happen, but that's really the only stain on Embiid's resume right now, because right now he is a top 50 player in the history of the game. You can't argue that. He's that good. He just needs sustained playoff success. In at number 4, we have Kevin Durant, the best pure scorer in the NBA. And I've had LeBron's fans argue to me, like, well, if KD's the best scorer, then how come LeBron has multiple seasons where he's scored more than Kevin Durant? My argument for that is I'm not arguing that. That's not what I'm saying when I make that argument. My point is, when you look at a basketball court, there's nowhere that Kevin Durant can't score from. I mean, he can score from any way you want. And three-point shot, mid-range, at the bucket, he'll dunk on you. He can fade on you. He can post up. He can shoot threes, heavily contested, mid-range, pull-up. Doesn't matter. He's one of the most gifted and skilled players to ever pick up a basketball. And also on the defensive side of the ball, when he tries, he can be pretty close to elite. I won't say he's quite an elite defender, but whenever he's engaged in the playoffs, he's one of the better defenders in the NBA. And at number 3, we have Steph Curry, the greatest shooter in the history of the game. The gap between Steph Curry and the second best shooter of all time is bigger than the planet. I mean, you can't even quantify how good this guy is at shooting. And it's the efficiency as well. Like, people get caught up in the range. Obviously, that's impressive. But the efficiency with which he hits the threes, I think, is just as impressive as how deep he's hitting the threes. And Steph Curry, I think he's really grown as a more complete player. He's grown in the playmaking department, and he's really grown as a defensive player. People don't really acknowledge that. I don't think the casuals really acknowledge that. Steph Curry is no slouch on defense anymore, and if you watch the 22 NBA Finals, you know that because he played his tail off in that Finals on the defensive side of the ball. I think he is the best offensive engine in the NBA. KD's the best scorer, but Steph Curry is the best engine because he can just go for... I mean, if there's anyone to ever break Wilt Chamberlain's 100 points in a game, I think Steph Curry will be the person to do that. And at number 2, we have the reigning NBA Finals MVP, Nikola Jokic. I think he's the most skilled player in the game of basketball right now. You look at offense, and there's really no way to put it into words. I mean, the not only is he one of the best passers ever, but he's also one of the most unguardable scorers ever. You combine that, I mean, he's literally a point guard in a center's body and can drop 50 on your head easily. Like, I remember watching this playoff run, and I was like just blown away with the coverages from 3-point range. I mean, they were smothering him from behind the arc, and he was just drilling them like it was nothing. And it doesn't matter even if you double off on him, he's gonna find the pass. He's gonna find the open man because he is the best passer in the NBA right now. I've said, for years I was arguing Embiid was better than Jokic, but at this point I can't really. I mean, I'd be delusional at this point to not admit that Jokic is better because he just won the championship. So he is the best center in basketball. I have one person above him, though. The best player in the world is Giannis Antetokounmpo. If you want to take Nikola Jokic after what he just did, I don't really have an argument. If you take Jokic at number 1, I'm not mad at that. I get it. But for me personally, I have Giannis because I just tend to value the ability to just physically take over a game. And as great as Jokic is, he's not the most, physically dominant presence. He's obviously more of a finesse skill guy. I just tend to usually like the more athletic and physically dominant type styles. So maybe just Giannis' style for me is why I took him over Jokic. But I can't get the 2021 NBA Finals out of my head. I mean, it is... For me, I haven't been watching basketball that long. My first season watching was the 2017 season. So of, the finals that I've seen, the 2021 finals from Giannis was the greatest finals performance that I've ever witnessed personally live. And maybe it's unfair to the other guys that I'm taking something into effect that happened 2 years ago, but I just can't forget about it. I mean, the physicality in which he dominated both sides of the ball, insane. And even in 2022, I know that they lost in the second round, but he took it to a Game 7, the eventual Eastern Conference champ Boston. He took them to a Game 7 without his second-best player, Middleton. This year is a bit of a yikes, but that's why they went out there and made that big trade and got Damian Lillard. And like I said when we talked about Dame, I think him and Dame, they're going to be the best duo in the NBA. So that's been my top 10. I'm sure it wasn't controversial at all. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you giving it a watch. Go ahead and like and subscribe.